Hello, Achim Yekarim, how are you? It's been a long time since we've had our Daily Chidush. Baruch Hashem, we've been trying to get a lot of work out there, a lot of different movies and different projects that we've been going on, so it's been a little difficult to come out with the Daily Chidush, but nonetheless, the questions keep coming in, and we try our best to include all of the questions that people have answered in our shiurim. So for anyone who wants really most of the answers that you would possibly ask, we have our Musar series, Musar Pirkei Avot series, that's been very, very popular, answering many people's questions. Now, many people ask me, how is it that you're saying something but my rabbi didn't say it? So if it was really important, then why wouldn't my rabbi say it? Or why wouldn't the so-and-so rabbi say it? So if it's true that for example, a Mechalel Shabbat is considered an idol worshiper, why isn't every single rabbi in the world screaming it out? If it's true that when you eat non-kosher food, it's destroying your neshama, why isn't every rabbi screaming it out? If it's true that immodesty destroys a woman's connection to Hashem, because she's in essence making his children sin on a regular basis, why isn't my rabbi saying it? Better yet, why is the rabbanit not modest? So first and foremost, we have to understand that you cannot compare all rabbis to each other, because not all rabbis have the same role. So just like there are different types of doctors, different types of lawyers, and different types of all types of professionals, there are different types of rabbis. So your community rabbi is a community rabbi. That doesn't necessarily mean that his focus is to help people do teshuvah. Your major posek rabbi, whether it's Rav Ovadia or Rav Eliashiv, Zecher Tzadik Livracha for both of them, or it's any of the major poskim throughout the generations, or even perhaps some that are still around today. If that's a posek, that's someone that is explaining the law, dictating a certain law that's out there, halacha that's out there. He's not going to make lectures to tell people to be modest. He's not going to explain to you the halachot of Shabbat, because that's not his role. Every rabbi has a different role. A kiruv rabbi, on the other hand, is a rabbi that's his entire focus is to get people to wake up and do teshuvah. Now, whether those people are completely secular, completely atheist, or even if they're already frum, but they've gotten the disease of getting used to things, like many of us have, where they got to a point where they're religious for so long that, prayer has become mundane and very boring, and the learning is not really as exciting anymore, so they need a wake-up call, they need a shock. And Rav Nisim Yagen, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, used to say is that when someone is passes out, the first thing they do is they pour water on his face to try to wake him up. But if that doesn't work, they hit him. They slap him in the face a few times. And if that doesn't work, they put the electric shock to try to get him to wake up. But unfortunately, if that doesn't work, then you call Cheva Kadisha, and you say Kadisha on the person. In essence, it's the same thing with a Jewish soul. It's the same thing with any person out there. Hashem is going to try to give you the messages in different ways. You can get it in a soft way through your community rabbi or otherwise a friend, and you're going to throw water in your face and remind you, hey, by the way, you really should come to shul more often. Hey, by the way, you really should keep Shabbat. And you say, no, it's not really a big deal. So the next thing Hashem is going to do is going to throw you a little bit of a stronger message. He's going to throw you a slap. You're going to get a flat tire on your way to a very, very important appointment. You're going to lose a little bit of money. You're going to have a pain on the right side that's unexplainable, and that's not going to work. If that doesn't work, then Hashem has to send you a different shock. He has to send you a shock of your life, and that shock of your life can come through either a major disaster, chas v'shalom, where someone can get sick and deal through a 7-year lifelong battle like I did, or they can take it from someone like myself, or like someone like Rav Mizrahi, that's going to tell you the truth, which is that a Mechalel Shabbat is considered 100% an idol worshiper according to the Jewish law. and is not allowed to say Kaddish, is not allowed to be a chazan, and all types of things that are horrible to hear, horrible to see, but nonetheless are true. And so it's hard to hear these things, but that's also the reason why most rabbis don't want this job. So now you're going to ask, well, there are many speakers out there. How do I know who's a kiruv rabbi and who's not? Well, it's very easy, very simple to find out. One, you could ask them, is your main focus kiruv? Is your main focus to help people do teshuvah? Or two, you could just listen to them and you could see their approach. And generally, most public speakers, even though they would love to help people do teshuvah, they're not against it, chas v'shalom, but that's not their primary focus. Their primary focus is education. So they're going to tell you, different shiurim, even if he's a community rabbi or he's a public speaker on Torah anytime or anywhere else, he's going to tell you different things that are good to hear, whether it's different things about shlom bayit, or different strategies of how you should contain your anger and try to focus on not being angry, or he's going to tell you stories about Parashat Shavua, and different things that are nice to hear, not too overwhelming, not too difficult to understand, and most importantly, not too challenging for you to do. It's going to be nice. It's going to make the sweetness of Torah very easy to understand. That's the overwhelming majority of speakers. You don't have to take my word for it. You can check it out for yourself. Go on any of these websites. Go on TorahAnytime.com. Go on YouTube. Go on, Torah Cafe or Shabbat.com or any of these other sites. You'll see many rabbis speak Divrei Torah. They're not talking about Chas v'Shalom Christianity or something like that. They're talking Torah. There's nothing wrong with what they say. But their focus is not necessarily kiruv per se, where they're going to be the one that is going to give you the shock of your life. They're trying to educate you. They're trying to darket Torah, darket noam. They're trying to show you the sweetness of Torah and hopefully will you in if you like the sweetness of it, similar to like a self-help book. A self-help book is not telling you, hey, listen, you need to do this, you need to do that. No, a self-help book, for the most part, is going to tell you things that you already know. They're really mostly common sense, but you need a reminder. It's not telling you, listen, you're terrible, you need to do this. If you don't do this, you get punished. No, it doesn't say that. Most rabbis, especially in the English-speaking world today, they are similar to a self-help book. They're similar to just your teacher. But once in a while, you're going to find somebody that's going to go out on a limb for you. And he's going to go on a limb for everyone. And he's going to tell you the things that no one wants to talk about. Because it's the things that everyone knows, that learns Torah, they know it, they just don't want to talk about it because it's hard to deal with the repercussions. So for example, if you guys all remember, anyone that went to shul or read the Parashat Shavua, last week's parasha was Bechukotai. Parashat Bechukotai is one of those parashot that talks about Hashem rebuking the nation in such a harsh way that it's mind-blowing. If you actually understand the words and you see the punishment that he promises to give us, not just says, maybe I'll do this. He promises to give us this punishment. If we don't follow his laws, if we don't do what he says, the 5 levels of punishment, if you actually understand the words, a normal person will just start either shivering, crying, or both. It's very, very scary. And anyone that has looked at history, whether it's the Bet HaMikdash, the first one, the second one, the pogroms, the inquisitions, or even Nazi Germany, יימח שמם וזכרם, you see that everything that Hashem wrote in that parasha, or the parashat Ki Tavo, actually happened. Even the worst of it. Even the worst of it that Bar Minan, when it never ever happened, got to a point of starvation where we ate children, our own children. And again, this happened. This is not some fairy tale. This happened. But if you look at just a few generations ago, they would read this parasha at the top of their voice. They would scream this parasha, and the entire Keilah during those days would shake, even though for the most part, most people were Shomrei Shabbat, they were keeping religion for the most part, even though the reform already started a couple hundred years ago. Still, 100 years ago, most people were still relatively religious to some extent. we didn't have as much of a problem as we have today. But yet they would scream this parasha and rebuke everyone to remind everyone there's a danger if we don't listen to Hashem. There's a present danger whether we see it or not. There's a present danger by not listening to Hashem, and they would scream it. Why do I mention this? Because today, the world has changed to such an extent, we've gotten so weak as people and as leaders, that in most shuls today, those parashot, Parashat Bechukotai or Kitavo, that talk about rebuke, that talk about the harsh punishment that Hashem promised, if we don't follow His law, they're virtually whispered. Not only are they not said and read in a Bet Knesset in a normal voice, they're actually whispered. Almost as if we don't want to hear it, which is the worst thing we can do for ourselves. It's the worst possible change in minhag we can do, which explains why most people don't even know that these parashot even exist anymore. So again, if you look at the rabbis that are screaming and telling you what I just said, that there's actually a couple of parashot that talk about us eating children's bar minan, that there's actually a couple of parashot that talk about major diseases like beyond anything the world has ever known. There's only a couple of out there, especially in the English-speaking language, that actually say those things and say it out loud and say the punishment and say what Hashem thinks about an immodest woman. Say what Hashem thinks about a person that's gambling. Say what Hashem thinks about, mixed dancing and weddings and things like that. Say what Hashem thinks about all these things. What He actually said about wasting seed, about Chilul Shabbat, about all these major sins that most of us, for the most part, don't think are major anymore. We've become comfortably numb. So when you have a few rabbis that are saying it, they're not saying their opinion. It has nothing to do with their opinion. It has nothing to do with my opinion. It has nothing to do with Rav Mizrahi's opinion or anybody else that says the truth. The few that remain. It has to do with God's opinion. And the fact that you're not hearing it from your rabbi, for the most part, it's because that's not his job. It's not his job to be a kiruv rabbi. He's an educator. He teaches Gemara, he teaches Daf Yomi, he teaches basic halacha. Now, if he gets to that halacha of Shabbat and he skips it, he skips the part that says if you don't keep Shabbat, you're an idol worshiper, then he's a rasha. If he gets to the part of the halacha or the Daf Yomi or the different part of that talks about modesty and he skips the part of what Hashem thinks about immodesty, or he changes it, or he uses euphemisms to minimize it, then he's a rasha. Then he's not a rabbi. Then he's a wicked person. But if he just doesn't cover it, he covers other subjects, he's not a rasha. It's just not his job. You can't compare a major leader to a kiruv rabbi. You can't compare a community rabbi to a kiruv rabbi. You can't compare every rabbi to each other. Just because they all have a title of rabbi means nothing. It's like a doctor. It's like a lawyer. There's different types. So it's time that we start understanding who we're dealing with. Each one has a different role. We learn in the Gemara in Bava Metzia, where there's a debate between the tzaddikim, Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yossi. And they say, who's your rabbi? So the first one says, it's the one that taught me Divrei Chokhmah, the one that taught me Gemara, that's my rabbi. And the other one says, no, that's not your rabbi. He says, the one that taught you most of what you know. There's a lot of what you know. There's 100% of knowledge that you have. But there's one particular rabbi that taught you most of it. You may have 5 rabbis. And over a lifetime, some people may have even more. Some rabbis taught them Tarat Mishpacha. Some rabbis taught them about Shlom Bayit. Some rabbis taught them Daf Yomi, Gemara. Some rabbis taught them Musar. There's different rabbis you're going to have. Some rabbis were just there for them as like a consultant, mentor type of person. But nonetheless, you have different rabbis. So he says, the one that taught you most of what you know, that's your rabbi. So let's say you have 100% of what your knowledge is. The one that, and 5 of them, let's say, taught you that 100%. But one particular rabbi taught you 40% of it. While the other 4, taught you the other 60%. So obviously that one that taught you 40%, that's your rabbi. But then Rabbi Yossi comes with a chidush. And he says, we learn from David HaMelech, anyone that has taught you even a Mishnah, even a single thing is already considered a rabbi. It's already considered someone you should consider your rabbi. Which is, by the way, the explanation for all of those heroes that ask about who has a smicha, who doesn't have a smicha. According to the Gemara, there's no more smichas like we had in the time of Moshe Rabbeinu. There are smichas today that people take tests, but many public speakers, myself included, don't have a test that we took at the rabbinical school, but they're still considered rabbis because according to the Gemara, anyone that teaches Torah is considered a rabbi. This is where the chidush that we have from the Gemara. You don't have a better source than that. No one has a better source. That's the Torah. But nonetheless, the point here, we have a chidush. We have a chidush that not only who's called a rabbi, but nonetheless that all of us are expected to have multiple types of rabbis. You're going to have your major chassid leader, or your major posek leader, or your major community leader. You're going to have the one that invigorates you and livens you up. You have the different types of rabbis. Point being is that it's your job to find the one that's going to wake up that neshama. It's your job to stick to the one that's not going to skip laws and is going to tell you everything. Of course, it's the rabbi's jobs to get everyone in front of these rabbis, or at least try to help people that are looking. But even if he doesn't, you're still obligated to do it. So, for all of those that are trying to, pinpoint different rabbis against each other, again, if you're going to compare rabbis, you have to compare the right one. You can't compare a major kiruv rabbi that has helped tens of thousands of people do teshuvah to a major posek and say, oh, just because Rabbi so-and-so that was Gdol Ador didn't say it, it must not be true. No, it's just not his job. It's like saying that just because the cancer doctor didn't talk about obesity, then it's not really a problem. No, it just his profession has to do with something else. Maybe his focus is on smoking. So again, you have to compare apples with apples. You have to compare professions with professions, expertise with expertise. And I think that once we compare all of things the right way, you'll have a much easier time not only focusing yourself, focusing your teaching, but also understanding why you'll hear something from me, you'll hear something from Rabbi Mizrahi, you'll hear something from certain different types of rabbis that perhaps you didn't hear from your local rabbi, perhaps you didn't hear from anyone else, but you heard it. Doesn't mean that it's not true. It just means that you're listening to different people, and now you're listening to us, or vice versa. You could always check everything that we say from the books. You could always verify it. Nothing is made up. The key is that the onus is on you to do the research, do the learning, and not run away from it. Be'ezrat Hashem, this answers a lot of your questions. May Hashem continue to bless us, get us closer and closer to Hashem Yitbarach, to fulfill His will as He dictates it. Kol Tuv.